Haven't even got onto the Greens.
Order, order, order. I call to Euro Flavell.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Kia ora tātou katoa e hoa I roto te whare tēnei ahi ai. Well, clearly the issue at hand has captured the fascination of everybody outside of the House before today, and today it captures our imagination and our fascination in terms of the debate, Mr. Speaker. Putting aside the celebrity aspects associated with the profile of actors and filmmakers in the public psyche, it has had the ability to touch on a huge range of issues of high importance to our national reputation, Mr. Speaker. This bill, this tiny 3-page bill, has the potential for massive impacts upon the tourism industry, the film production and entertainment sector, industrial relations, international status, foreign investment, worker rights, and indeed the fate of our own domestic economy. That has been the general tenor of the discussion up until this point in time. And it is also an issue in which New Zealanders have been compelled to action, to take people to the streets, for goodness sake, to flood the email with a heap of traffic, and to lobby the government to listen. Mr. Speaker, Māori, like others, are represented at every level of the film production industry. There's an increasing number of Māori working in the film production industry, especially as actors and as stunt crew. And this bill specifies the range of occupations that it does encompass. To cut to the chase then, what's the bill all about? Some have alluded to it, but I remind those listening again that this bill amends Section 6 of the Employment Relations Act 2000, which relates to the meaning of the word employee. As a result of this legislation, Mr. Speaker, the meaning of employee will now specifically exclude a person engaged in film production work as an actor, voiceover actor, stand-in, a body double, stunt performer, an extra, a singer, musician, dancer or entertainer, or person engaged in film production work in any other capacity. Mr. Speaker, as an indication of just how widespread the impacts of this legislation will be, even within our own very small team here in Parliament, we have amongst our numbers those who have actually worked in the film industry. And I'll leave it up to the members as to their imagination as to whether that was in performing stunts or actually the art of acting. Be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, some might say that amongst the current cast of MPs, we also have those who've had their fair share in fronting the camera, elevated to the nation's audience of University Challenge. Some have danced with the stars, hosted Asian Down Under, to name a few. So the experience of being in front of the camera is not new, both within the realms of this House right now and indeed the parliamentary complex. Mr. Speaker, the bill will provide for incentives for film production to be carried out here, not only by foreign production companies, but by local production companies as well. And from our perspective, that's great news for Māori filmmakers, and it's great news for the broader workforce engaged in film production. In saying that, sir, we do acknowledge that all of the people who are pursuing careers in the film industry must be made aware of the importance of securing satisfactory employment agreements with the production companies that they may work for, as the Employment Relations Act will no longer cover them. Mr. Speaker, I also just wanted to touch on some of the concerns that we have and that have emerged actually about the workers' rights under this bill. From a point of view of those who have worked in the film industry, it would seem that there are procedures in place that provide for a certain degree of rangatiratanga of the individual when engaging in film work. Now, sir, I use the word rangatiratanga deliberately because I do think that one of the opportunities that can arise at situations like this is that it places incentives on the need to encourage whānau to be pretty much self-reliant and to show their economic leadership. Mr. Speaker, according to those in the know, contracts are negotiated between cast and crew members and production companies. The nature of the contract is wholly dependent on the diligence, I suppose, of the individual or the group negotiating it. This is not so much a case of survival of the fittest, but it does point out the significance of the collective will in negotiations. So it's also evident in the recent commentary from New Zealand Actors Equity that they will take steps to ensure that their members are signing appropriate employment agreements with film production companies. Mr. Speaker, as we've watched this issue unfold, it's obvious that the film production family in New Zealand is a very tight-knit community, albeit very small. Those in the industry have told us that major issues that arise on sets tend to spread throughout the entire industry grapevine. And perhaps, sir, that's why this issue has generated such intense interest, because future career prospects and economic opportunities have seemed so vulnerable to the personalities and politics involved. But we can't get away from the fact that there is an amazing opportunity for filmmaking that is now right on our doorstep, which, as others have said, 24 hours ago, it didn't look in any way, shape or form possibly likely. Mr. Speaker, I want to share a comment by my colleague, Mr. Hone Harawira, his enthusiasm that he's gained from talking to people like Lawrence Makware and others in the film industry, Māori that is, about how much work they got throughout the Rings trilogy and about how just being part of that whole project changed their lives. According to Hone, sir, it gave them a vision about what else they could be. It provided them with a place in history, and you just can't beat that kind of experience and the kind of exposure to things that they might never otherwise have got involved with. And indeed, had those films not been in Aotearoa over the last few years. Mr. Speaker, on that note, I might just share another breaking news moment in the history of Parliament, and that is an email we received earlier today from Hone himself, which I'll read for the record. It states, "Congratulations to John Key for pulling off this deal." But of course, it's not just a matter of breaking news, of box office sales and multi-million-dollar investments that we're talking about in this Employment Relations Film Production Work Amendment Bill. And we do have some concerns about the vexed issues of precedent or of anomalies not worked through. As a case in point, sir, I wonder, say, how rapidly the government might jump through hoops to bring in pay parity for employees of Māori and iwi health providers, an ongoing policy concern which is most certainly in the national interest to resolve. Mr. Speaker, we have Māori nurses and health workers in the NGO sector paid 25% less than those working in the public sector. They don't go on strike because of their total commitment to the people that they serve. In October 2004, 20,000 NZO members in the DHBs won a benchmark, a fair pay settlement, closing the pay gap between DHB-employed nurses, midwives and healthcare assistants and other professionals in roles requiring similar skills, experience and qualifications, such as teachers and police. So what was the good news? While there was good news for those working in the DHB, the settlement left those NZNO members in the primary health sector significantly lagging behind. And although this pay gap is now almost closed for most of the primary health workforce, the pay parity for Māori and iwi primary health providers, at least in the workforce, is now around 25%. It's not as if the solution would take a workforce or an urgent ministerial inquiry to resolve. It's pretty straightforward. Pay parity will mean better health and well-being for our communities and all New Zealanders. The policy problem then, sir, is that there are those of our people working for Māori and iwi health providers have the skills, qualifications and experience that are essential to improve health outcomes for Māori, and yet they receive far lower salaries than their equivalents in DHB. So it would be a great day when the health and well-being of Māori was accorded urgency when the needs of Māori health workers were elevated to the levels of national priority that this particular issue has in the interest of...
Order. I have indicated to the member twice to bring it into relevance. This is not a bill about health issues. This is a bill about employment. So I'm
closing anyway, but the point I was making was that the issues around pay are relevant to the issues of employment. And so I say that... Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. Thank you very much. So the point I was making was it would be great if the needs of health workers were elevated. So the point I'm making is that it would be great if the needs of the health workers were elevated to the same levels of national priority that have come about because of the interests of the two movies are related to The Hobbit. So nevertheless, We do not want to close off the opportunities for New Zealand to benefit from the immediate opportunities in the film production industry, and to this end, the Māori Party will be supporting this bill.